The samples that were brought back by the 6 Apollo missions to the moon have enabled really unprecedented studies of the history of the solar system. So it's the Apollo samples that really open this window into the...
In the records of space exploration, one mission is shrouded in mystery. Apollo 10, with all engines operational, a testament to human innovation, propelled individuals through the dark void to make contact with the moon's surface. Concealed within the triumph of this celestial achievement is a secret of such profound and contentious nature that it has deterred NASA from revisiting our lunar neighbor for numerous decades. What undisclosed truths might be concealed in the lunar shadows, and what accounts for the moon evolving into a forbidden frontier, preventing humanity's return? Join us on this expedition as we unveil the undisclosed realities of the Apollo astronauts and the rationale behind NASA's prolonged absence from the moon. In the early 1960s, the United States formulated plans to dispatch humans to the moon. The public became aware of these plans when President John F. Kennedy addressed Congress on May 25, 1961. In his speech, he declared, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to reaching the moon before the end of this decade. The goal is to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth." Shortly before Kennedy's speech, Russia had achieved a significant milestone by sending Yuri Gagarin into space in a space capsule, making him the first human to orbit the Earth and land safely. This accomplishment did not sit well with the US, prompting them to strive for another notable title and record in spaceflight, the first man on the moon. 5 years after the President's proclamation, the time arrived to launch the inaugural Apollo space capsule into orbit. On January 27, 1967, a ground exercise occurred at Cape Canaveral Spaceport in Florida, ahead of the actual rocket launch. Intended as a routine test for the 3-man crew, the exercise took a tragic turn. A fire broke out, while the astronauts Gus Grissom, Edward H. White, and Roger B. Chaffee were confined in the space capsule for several hours. The space capsule's opening mechanism failed, leading to the untimely demise of the astronauts aboard Apollo 1 before they could embark on their journey into space. The nation experienced shock, yet Kennedy persisted with his lunar program. Just 18 months later, Apollo 7 achieved a successful orbit around the Earth with a human crew. Today, the general public tends to recall only the actual moon landing, often overlooking the numerous test flights and Apollo missions that preceded humanity's first lunar touchdown. The perpetually dark far side of the moon eludes observation with telescopes. During that era, rumors circulated about potentially sinister entities hidden on the far side of the moon. Whether Kennedy and NASA entertained such notions when launching Apollo 8 remains uncertain. Officially, astronauts Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders reported no noteworthy observations during their 10 orbits around the moon. The moon was declared safe, marking the success of the first manned flight over that distance, paving the way for subsequent human landings. In that identical month, the Apollo 9 crew tested the transfer from the space shuttle to the landing capsule in Earth orbit. Apollo 10 replicated the test maneuver in lunar orbit, omitting the landing. Subsequently, on the morning of July 16, 1969, the renowned Apollo 11 mission took off from Kennedy Space Center. On board were 2 astronauts who gained worldwide fame, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. After 76 hours of space travel, Apollo 11 entered the moon's orbit on July the 19th. The following day, at 1:46 p.m. local time at the Houston, Texas Control Center, the lunar module, carrying Armstrong and Aldrin, separated from the command module where Collins remained. 2 hours later, the lunar module touched down on the southwestern edge of Mare Tranquillitatis. Armstrong's words, "The Eagle has landed," etched into history, as did the words he uttered at 10:56 p.m., just before his first step on the lunar surface. "That's one small step for man, but one giant leap for mankind." 19 minutes later, Aldrin became the second man to set foot on the lunar surface, marking a historic moment. Subsequently, 6 more manned Apollo missions followed, with 5 successfully landing on the Moon. Apollo 13 encountered issues shortly after launch due to a service module explosion, necessitating a dramatic rescue operation for an unfulfilled mission return to Earth. In December 1972, astronauts Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, part of the Apollo mission, became the last humans to step onto the Moon. Over 50 years have passed without any manned lunar expeditions. Consequently, NASA chose not to revisit the Moon, officially citing financial, scientific, and the completion of lunar research after 6 successful landings. Post-Moon missions, the vast expanse of space beckoned with more captivating objectives. These, however, weren't pursued by humans, but rather by probes such as Pioneer, Mariner, and Voyager, which effectively explored more distant regions of the solar system. These missions provided crucial insights into our planetary surroundings and the previously mysterious outer planets. The Moon was depleted and human interest had significantly diminished. While the Apollo 11 landing garnered the attention of 530 to 600 million viewers worldwide, only a few million tuned in for the Apollo 17 landing. There were also speculations among experts that NASA, mindful of the challenges, didn't want to push its luck indefinitely. The Apollo 13 incident had instilled a sense of caution in the space industry, and the potential risks, including the loss of astronauts, were carefully considered in each subsequent Apollo mission. It took many years post-Apollo 11 for the US government to release footage featuring Richard Nixon delivering a eulogy for astronauts Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. In the event of a critical outcome, television stations could have promptly broadcast Nixon's pre-recorded address. In the now perceived unconventional speech, Nixon commended the men's courage, emphasizing that their sacrifice was not in vain, but contributed to the nation's great honor. Additional insights into the Apollo emergency program revealed that NASA astronauts Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins were formally granted the choice in an extreme situation to accept their fate or take their own lives on the Moon or in space. Shifting focus from rockets to social programs, the early 1970s witnessed global protests by marginalized social groups. In the US, the Black Civil Rights Movement and later women's rights activists spearheaded fervent protests against the government. The central tenet of the US uprisings against space exploration was clear, questioning the responsibility of investing billions of US dollars in moon flights, while widespread poverty and disadvantage persisted on Earth. Although racial segregation had been overturned by the Supreme Court in 1954, the US was still far from achieving true equality of opportunity during that period. Under the leadership of Ralph Abernathy, a close associate of Martin Luther King Jr., and Black Panther activist Jesse Jackson, African Americans nationwide staged protests. Dubbed Rockets or Rickets, the movement urged the government to redirect funds from rocket projects toward essential social initiatives and the fight against poverty. On January 5, 1972, President Nixon declared the decision to conclude the Apollo moon landings following the planned Apollo 17 mission. Officially, this was portrayed as a strategic shift rather than a response to public protests. Nixon stated the intention to allocate available funds to future projects. However, this decision led to a substantial budget reduction. In 1969, during the Apollo 11 mission, NASA's budget stood at approximately $4.4 billion. By 1972, it had contracted to about $3.5 billion, with further cuts ensuing. From the 2000s onward, the budget experienced an upswing, attributed in part to advancements in technology and discoveries by the Hubble Space Telescope, currently exceeding $20 billion annually. Presently, there is minimal opposition to this budget, with most Americans supporting NASA's projects and taking pride in the USA's prominent role in space exploration. The return to the moon through the Artemis project marks a significant development. Plans for a lunar return and the construction of a manned lunar station were reportedly dormant in NASA's archives for an extended period. The impetus for a new lunar mission emerged, presumably triggered by the competition from private space companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, pulling NASA out of its lunar slumber. In 2017, there were reports that NASA had accelerated the Artemis project's pace after Elon Musk's intention to launch the first lunar-capable rocket in the subsequent year became apparent. The Artemis project aims to return humans to the moon, commencing in 2024. Concerns arose due to recurrent delays in the launches of Artemis space shuttles, sparking rumors of NASA reconsidering its commitment. In November 2022, Artemis 1 successfully journeyed to the moon without a human crew, garnering moderate international interest. Anticipation is expected to surge when the manned Artemis 2 mission lands on the moon in 2024. The Mysterium Moon. Why we need to know more. Recent research results emphasize that the moon is far from being scientifically exhausted. Probes like the Lunar Orbiter have provided unprecedented insights into Earth's companion, rekindling questions about the moon's formation and composition. Contrary to previous assumptions, the moon might have originated as a small planet. Evidence pointing to an active core and intriguing geological processes on the lunar surface supports this notion. Unusual cracks and moonquakes hint at hidden aspects of the moon's history. The presence of substantial water and unique geological structures will be closely examined by the first scientists permanently residing on the moon. Artemis missions will not only bring astronauts, but also experts in astrogeology and botanists to the moon. Greenhouses, along with habitation modules, are planned to ensure sustainable resources, providing settlers with locally produced food on the moon. So thanks for watching this video. What are your opinions on these missions? Do you believe lunar exploration is significant and that humans should establish a presence on the moon? Tell us in the comments below and subscribe for more.